Remember when the smallest treasures could hold the biggest surprises? Or maybe you recall the thrill of slipping a rare coin or vintage watch into your pocket? Today we take a look at 10 forgotten 1970s treasures that might just be worth a fortune. 1. Lincoln Memorial Penny, small date 1970. Coming in at number 1 is a coin so small, you could easily overlook its true worth. In 1970, the U.S. Mint released two versions of the Lincoln Memorial Penny, one with a large date and another with a smaller, more delicate font. To most people back then, the difference was hardly noticeable, and these pennies went straight into pockets, piggy banks, or tip jars without a second thought. What makes the small date variety so special is its extreme rarity. Only a limited number were struck, and even fewer survived in pristine, uncirculated condition. Today, collectors will pay tens of thousands, sometimes over $30, for one of these humble copper coins if it's graded near perfect. The fun fact? Many of these valuable pennies are still out there, quietly resting in change jars or tucked into old wallets. Imagine finding one while sorting through your loose change, a single cent that could pay for a brand new car. It's a reminder that sometimes, the tiniest treasures carry the biggest surprises. 2. Vintage perfumes. Coming in at number 2 is a treasure that can't be seen, it has to be experienced. In the 1970s, perfume wasn't just about smelling nice, it was about making a statement. Scents like Alyssa Ashley's Civet Oil or Yves Saint Laurent's Opium were bold, earthy, and unforgettable, often matching the daring fashion and free-spirited energy of the decade. A single spritz could transport you to a smoky disco, a candlelit dinner, or a summer evening on the porch. What makes these bottles so valuable today is their rarity and their ability to capture a moment in time. Many of the formulas have been altered or discontinued, and finding a bottle in its original packaging, especially unopened, is like discovering a piece of bottled history. Here's the fun fact: collectors will pay thousands for certain vintage scents. Not just for the fragrance, but for the design of the bottle itself. That ornate glass stopper or gold-accented label you remember from your mother's vanity could be worth far more than you ever imagined. In the world of vintage perfumes, it's not just about how it smells, it's about the memories it holds. 3. Typewriters. Coming in at number 3 is the machine that turned thoughts into tangible words, the typewriter. In the 1970s, having one in your home or office wasn't just convenient, it was a mark of purpose. Whether it was a sturdy manual model or a sleek electric version, the steady clack-clack of the keys became the soundtrack to homework assignments, love letters, and the beginnings of great novels. What makes them special today is their craftsmanship and mechanical charm. Built like little tanks, many typewriters from this era still work perfectly after decades of use. For collectors, it's not just about function, it's about the feel of pressing each key, watching ink strike paper, and slowing down in a way modern technology doesn't allow. The fun fact? Certain brands and models, like the IBM Selectric or Olivetti Lettera, can fetch hundreds, even over $1,000, depending on their condition. And if you still have one tucked in a closet, you might be holding both a piece of history and a surprisingly valuable collector's item. In an age of touchscreens, there's something magical about a machine that makes you savor every single word. 4. Apple computers, Apple I. Coming in at number 4 is a piece of technology that looked humble but sparked a revolution, the Apple I computer. Released in 1976, this was Apple's very first product. Hand-assembled by Steve Wozniak and sold as a bare circuit board. Buyers had to supply their own keyboard, monitor, and wooden case, but for the tech-curious of the time, it was like stepping into the future. What makes the Apple I so valuable today is its extreme scarcity. Only about 200 units were ever made, and far fewer have survived, especially in working condition. To collectors and technology historians, owning one isn't just about nostalgia, it's about holding a tangible piece of Silicon Valley's origin story. The fun fact? In recent years, Apple I units have sold at auction for over $400, particularly when they still have their original manuals, packaging, or documentation signed by Wozniak or Jobs. What was once a strange little project for hobbyists has become one of the most coveted artifacts in computing history, proof that big ideas can come from the humblest beginnings. 5. Magazines, 1970s special, first editions. Coming in at number 5 is a slice of pop culture you could hold in your hands, the magazines of the 1970s. Back then, a glossy cover meant more than just reading material. It was a status symbol for whoever, or whatever, was featured on it. Rolling Stone, Life, Time, and Vogue captured the decade's biggest moments: celebrity weddings, political scandals, moon landings, and the rise of cultural icons. What makes certain issues so valuable today is their rarity and historical significance. First appearances of major stars, limited-run special editions, or covers tied to defining events can fetch anywhere from a few hundred to several $1,000s. Especially if the magazine is in excellent condition. Here's the fun fact: collectors aren't just chasing the content, they're chasing the feeling. The yellowed pages, the vintage ads, and the photography style all act as a time capsule. Holding a 1970s magazine is like stepping into that moment in history, with every headline and photo frozen exactly as it was when it first hit the newsstand. 6. Vinyl records. Coming in at number 6 is the format that defined how we listened to music in the 1970s: vinyl records. Back then, music wasn't just something you streamed, it was something you owned, displayed, and cared for. Every album had a personality. From its crackling intro to the vivid artwork on the cover, flipping a record over felt like turning the page in a story you couldn't put down. What makes certain vinyl records so valuable today is a mix of rarity, condition, and cultural impact. First pressings of legendary albums, limited editions, or records from artists who defined the decade can easily fetch hundreds, sometimes thousands, of dollars. And unlike digital music, vinyl offers that warm, analog sound that audiophiles swear can't be replicated. The fun fact? Even records you bought for a few bucks back in the day might now be collector gold, especially if they're still in their original sleeve and free of scratches. That box of LPs in the attic isn't just taking up space. It could be a treasure chest of musical history waiting to be rediscovered. 7. Vintage video games, Atari, etc. Coming in at number 7 is the pixelated magic that started it all: vintage video games. In the late 1970s, consoles like the Atari 2600 turned living rooms into arcade arenas. Games such as Space Invaders, Adventure, and the original Donkey Kong didn't need realistic graphics to capture our imaginations, just a joystick, a cartridge, and the thrill of beating your own high score. What makes these games so valuable today is their role in launching an entire industry. Complete, boxed systems and rare titles in mint condition can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Limited releases or games tied to pop culture phenomena are especially prized by collectors. Here's the fun fact: even well-used cartridges can be worth a surprising amount if they're rare enough. That dusty box in the closet might hold more than just childhood memories. It could be holding a small fortune in gaming history. And for many, firing up an Atari isn't just about playing a game, it's about stepping back into a time when press start promised hours of pure, uncomplicated fun. 8. Rare stamps. Coming in at number 8 is something small enough to fit on the corner of an envelope, yet valuable enough to buy a house: rare stamps. In the 1970s, sending a letter was more than a routine chore, it was an art. And the stamp was its finishing touch. While most stamps from the era are common, a few were printed in limited runs, featured historic events, or even contained printing errors that turned them into instant rarities. What makes these stamps so sought after today is their combination of scarcity and story. A misprint, like an inverted image, or a commemorative issue tied to a major cultural moment can push the value into the tens of thousands, even up to $1 million in extreme cases. Condition is everything, with crisp, unused stamps fetching the highest prices. The fun fact? Many valuable stamps are still tucked away in forgotten albums, inherited boxes, or dusty desk drawers. That tiny square of paper you once used to mail a birthday card could now be worth more than the car parked in your driveway. Sometimes, history's biggest treasures come in the smallest packages. 9. Comic books, Bronze Age. Coming in at number 9 is the colorful gateway to countless adventures, the comic books of the Bronze Age. In the 1970s, superheroes weren't yet billion-dollar movie stars. They lived on cheap newsprint, stacked in spinner racks at corner stores. Waiting to be discovered, kids traded them at lunch, read them until the covers wore thin, and rarely thought about keeping them pristine. What makes these comics so valuable today is their mix of nostalgia, artistry, and cultural significance. First appearances of iconic characters. Milestone issues like giant-size X-Men #1 or Tomb of Dracula #10. And limited print runs can fetch thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, especially in near-mint condition. Here's the fun fact. The 1970s marked a creative shift in comics. With bolder storytelling, grittier heroes, and more complex themes. For collectors, each crease, each faded color, is a time machine back to the thrill of turning that next page. If you've got a box of old comics in the attic, you might be holding more than just childhood memories, you could be holding pop culture gold. 10. Antique watches. Coming in at number 10 is a timeless treasure. Literally, antique watches from the 1970s. Back then, a fine watch wasn't just a way to tell time, it was a milestone gift, a status symbol, and a daily companion. Brands like Rolex, Omega, and Heuer produced models that balanced precision engineering with unmistakable style, making them coveted accessories for both men and women. What makes these watches so valuable today is their craftsmanship and scarcity. Mechanical timepieces from this era were built to last, and models with original parts, unique dials, or limited production runs can command prices in the tens of thousands. Even more, each watch carries a history, worn through first jobs, anniversaries, and once-in-a-lifetime adventures. The fun fact? Some collectors prize the patina, the subtle aging of the dial and hands, that tells the watch's unique story. Far from being considered flaws, these marks of time make the piece even more desirable. In a world of disposable tech, an antique watch reminds us that some things are worth keeping, and that true style never goes out of fashion. So, which of these treasures from the 1970s do you remember most? Maybe it was a comic book you read until the pages curled, or a vinyl record that became the soundtrack to your youth, or perhaps you still have one of these items tucked away, quietly waiting to be rediscovered. We'd love to hear your stories. Drop a comment below and share your favorite memory. And if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you'll never miss our next nostalgic journey into the past.